I'm Trey and welcome to another of my colouring tutorials. I'm going to be working on a Jasmine Becket Griffith design and it's from the Colour in Heaven Strangeling special issue. I got this issue because I hadn't used any of this artist's work before and I like the look of it. I've seen other people working on it. And when I got the designs, I thought, oh, these are lovely and I'll have a go at these. And then I had a mental block and I haven't done anything in this issue. So I'm trying to get past that mental block. So I've decided to think out of the box when it comes to colours. And I can get away with that because it's a fantasy design. So I'm going to be working just on the portrait of the lady, probably be in two parts. And the first part I'm doing now is going to be the skin. I'm going to be using two pencil brands, and the first one I'll be using now is Marco Refine. The skin tone I've decided to try is purpley pinks. However, the first layer I'm going to put down is like a creamy coloured, and that's because of the colours I'm using. I needed to lighten them slightly. So as I always do, it will be a very light layer, first layer, and I'm going to colour over all of the skin like a base layer in this cream. I'm trying to do the first layer in little circular motions to try and make it easier later on to blend the different colours because they are quite contrasting colours. I think I figured out why I had a little bit of a mental block with this design and this artist's work. I've never worked on a portrait so large. And I think what I found is it's a little bit daunting to do so much skin and face. That's probably why I kind of held off doing one of these designs. I think we, as colorists, we see lovely artwork, and I know I do this. And then I realise after I've got it that it's more of a challenge than I realised originally. I looked at it and think, oh, that looks lovely. I'd like to try it. But when I come down to actually try it, I get stuck. I'll work now on my first purpley pink layer, and I'm going to work on the darkest sections, moving. I'm not sure if I'm going to leave a layer of the cream as a highlight. I'll see as I go along how it's working out. The first layer is always a difficult one for me because I can hardly see it, especially when you're working with very pale colours. all along the hairline it will be darker, and then I am extending the darker with this shade because it's the lightest purple I'll be using. I may well need to extend it further later, but I'll see how it works out for now. And also I'm darkening around the edge of the face and a little bit round the ear, which is not shaped like a full ear, so I'm not quite sure how that's going to work. I'm darkening in underneath these eyelashes because they're quite thick. I'm thinking that they would have a bit more of a shadow. Now I'm going to do the shading for the, start the shading for the nose, and I'm just going to do a slight hint of shaping, come from the eyebrows. A little bit underneath here, between the nose, bottom of the nose and the lip. Goes round underneath the nose and round. Maybe do a little bit here. Just to emphasize the top of the nose. Again, I mean, I could well change this and go over all of the cream yet, I don't know. Just a little bit underneath there. The lips. Deciding not to go all the way down to with the shading to the end of the nose. I just thought I would do the top half for now. Now go underneath the chin and go along the hairline, which is the easiest really to do a little bit of shading. I'm still only doing light pressure. It's a bit patchy at this point, as it always is from the first two layers. Follow that strand of hair around. I'm using the little corners and the lines to put the shading in. Do a little bit along the edge of this strand of hair, but you leave the top of the shoulder later. I'm going to put a darker line where the arm and the body connect to emphasize that. And then just around the edges of the arm. And this is, you know, just rough. I probably will extend it inwards. I'm going to go over part of the shading now areas with my medium purple, and It's just to give me an idea of where I think my shading will be and if I need to extend it. I'm still keeping light pressure. You know, if I go too far with my shading, as I go on darker, I can rub it out. These pencils work quite well in being erased. I'm putting a little bit more shading in between the eyelashes just because they're quite thick eyelashes. I feel there would be more shading there, more shadow. So I'm just going to go around all the edge of the face again. So I'll just highlight other bits. I'm going to go darker on the bits around the nose. I'll do the face outline off camera, you don't need to watch that. Such as here with the nose shape and just darkening in where I think the top edge of the nose would be. Same on this side. Underneath the nose, between the lips. And the edges around on the neck and in between the thinnest parts where the hair strands are. I'll make them all darker, I feel. But if the gap is wider, I'll just do around the edge. I put down one more layer for each of the colours, including the cream, and I decided that the cream was a little bit too much of a contrast. So I'm going to go over the cream with the lightest pink I have in this Marco Refine set. Just lightly, just softens that up a little bit more. It's been quite freeing doing this skin tone, because generally I'm trying to do a realistic skin tone. I'm never quite happy with it. So this has been fun to do this. It doesn't have to be, look realistic. It just looks different. Now, going over the cream sections with a light pink has worked quite nicely. It's softened up the contrast between the purpley pinks and the cream. So I'm just going to overlap a little bit more with that pink into the other sections. And I'm doing this because I've decided to try blending with baby oil. And I know that once I do the blend, I won't be able to get anything else down. So I'm just doing, it's almost like a light blend into those sections, the darker sections with the pale pink. Now I've done this project, done this skin and that with student grade pencils, and it's nice to see you can achieve quite a bit with these pencils. However, I am getting to a stage where it's difficult to get the layers down. So even though I've used light pressure, it's starting to, I struggle to get any more layers down. So we'll see how the blend does. Right, I'm now going to have a go at blending this with with baby oil. I only ever use a tiny wee bit, and I tend to take most of it off before I put it onto the paper. I'd rather not have enough than too much. Start at the edges and see how this goes. Just doing it lightly. I do have a couple of sets of pencils that are more artist grade. However, I tend to find I use my student grade the most, mostly because of the cost. You know, I use up my artist grade pencils. You know, it's replacing them. It's cheaper to replace these pencils. Especially when you're using them on a large area like this. It's going to be difficult to get into those little areas, so I probably won't try too much there. I'm working on the darker areas first, so that I don't transfer the darker colour into the light. I forgot to mention, make sure you have a piece of card underneath, because the oil will bleed through a little bit. I find it doesn't, if you don't use a lot, but there's the darker bit. So I'm now going to use a different part of the cotton bud with baby oil on for the lighter, because it will transfer, take some of the colour off. I don't want that pink to go into the lighter pink too much. Again, I'm just using light pressure just to smooth it out a little bit. Go over the darker bits a little bit more, and I think that's worked out quite nicely. It smoothed it out, and it looks quite good. That it's a lot different from what I would normally do for skin. And now, of course, I've put baby oil on this for blending. I won't be able to put any more layers down, but I'm quite happy with that. I'll just maybe work a little bit more on smoothing that out, but apart from that, that's really good. And it's been so nice to step out of doing realistic skin. I didn't feel quite so stressed about how it was going to turn out with the colours. I just went for it, which is kind of nice. I think sometimes when you want to create something, you realise you get quite tense about it, because it maybe doesn't look the way you would like it to, or you don't feel it's worked out very well. So this has been quite nice. It's also been a nice starter into this book, which I was struggling to get into. So that is the skin done for this part of this tutorial, part 1. And when I come back to this project, I will do the hair, the eyes and the lips. So I hope anybody that's watched this has found it quite useful. Got some hints and tips. Enjoy your colouring, and I'll see you next time.